Hello, I'll make this one quick because I'm having trouble again with the movies. That's okay. It'll work out eventually. Um, this week I had to just finish rereading Eve again because I've read the whole cycle and I didn't want to start talking about things that happened in the other book. So here we have another dystopian novel. They're all of them going to be that way. I sort of like our first two books. They had Matched, and you're reading Shipbreaker now. Both of them had dealt with a kind of in some respects, post-apocalyptic event, warfare, pollution, these kinds of things. There's still a war going on in Matched, and uh, there's a great we should say, the divide between the haves and the have-nots. And of course, one of the big things your author is the effects of climate change, especially in terms of killer storms and the melting of the Arctic. And I love it that the pirates are Inuits who've lost their hunting grounds and things along these lines. In this particular book, um, what's destroyed everything is a plague. Um, there's a book from 1951 if you want. It's not a dystopic novel, but it's called Earth Abides. And in that particular one, George Stewart is the writer, and this is a very famous novel. Um, he posited that there is a plague due to overpopulation. In this particular novel, the plague is never, um, we never really get any great details about it. All we know is that 98% of the people were killed, and one of the reasons is that, of course, the antidote, the vaccine, ensured that anybody who got the vaccine, like Eve's mother, died. And I guess there were slightly more boys. um, at any rate, what you have here is, as I said, somewhere along the line, it's a lot, very affinities with the novel and the movie The Handmaid's Tale. Because in this particular story, there is still the divide between haves and have-nots, but you find that the remaining boys, are sentenced to work in labor camps. They're not even educated. There's no question about what they're going to be doing. Um, and Caleb and others have escaped, and they have the crest with the New America seal, um, and their life is going to be one of a horrible labor. And this is one of the things that happens in our book. That's a lot like um, our protagonist in Matched, um, that he has to learn. She has to learn. Our character Eve um, has to learn, like Cassia did, about what the reality is around her, and one of the ways is to control information. And here we're going to have schools. The girls all go to schools where all the literature, everything is interpreted uh, to show how bad men are. Then there's only one good man that we were told, and that is the king, who, I mean, after the plague, we learned had, I think Marjorie may talk about this, that set out to have this dictatorship, or whatever what becomes a dictatorship. The idea was to have it for a short period, but of course, power corrupts, and ultimate power corrupts ultimately. Um, and so you have the division of the sexes. And what we need is babies, so that New American can be great again. Uh, and so the girls are segregated, and in these schools where they go till they're 12 years. Most of the orphans came when they were 5 years old. Have a complete meltdown of society, and nothing works much anymore. The king and lives in the Sand City, which you don't get to meet in this novel, but if you read further on, you will. Um, and the girls are used for breeding purposes only. Uh, they think they do get a strange, wacky education. They're never allowed out of their compound. They carry whistles to they hear things on the outside, and across the river is this monolithic, rather ugly concrete structure where they're going to go for their post-school educations. And they all are, they all want, someone wants to be doctors, others, our character wants to be a painter, a muralist, um, and that's what they think is going to happen when they go to the other school. But of course, they never see anything. It's Arden who figures it out, and this is a stark reality that um, Eve will go across the lake and look into the window and see the valedictorian from 3 years earlier, a girl named Sophie, um, strapped to a bed. And then she's going to realize as she moves along and that, it's all a big lie. They're cared for and made sure that they have vitamins and it's a kind of a controlled environment, unlike the chaos at Bright's Beats, but very controlled environment that we find in Maple Grove, I think the name of the place whose name gets changed at the end of the book in Matched. It's all control of information, and then of course love. There's no love. You're matched. Although the parents love each other, but the idea is that we take choice away from you. And this happens in our novel, except the girls are given an education, and they, let's say, graduated. They came when they were orphans at 5. Um, then they leave when they're 17, which is a good childbearing age. And that's what they do. And the youngsters are taken to the city where they're going to be raised. We never see any of them, but you will if you continue reading. And our Eve had been given the Medal of Achievement, and she's going to be the valedictorian, and they're going to march gloriously across the bridge to the school in the morning, but it never happens. Of course, the teacher doesn't force, who sees Eve on her return after she's seen the truth, knows the truth. And I think she says, I was 50 when this happened, and there's really nothing I can do, but she knows what happens. And so she helps Eve escape. Um, of course, Eve knows nothing about survival skills, nothing at all. But it's the first where we have what we do have, if you read more of Matched, is Cassie will go on an odyssey. The female character will go on an odyssey. Of course, she's going to be looking for uh, her boyfriend. Um, our boy Nails goes on rather an odyssey himself, um, and then this one's going to concentrate on Eve's recognition of what the world is really like and how dangerous a place it is. You keep that in mind as you're reading. And it's a love story. Callie comes up on a horse, and of course she's petrified of anything male. I just loved rereading is that alcohol was invented. Basically, she's told by one of the teacher Agnes, I think, or someone, that it's invented for men to seduce women, or to women to lose their resolve. I mean, there's a very good reason for all this, as you're going to come to find out, is that the women aren't raised to be husbands and wives, husbands and wives. The men are going to work until they drop, and the women um, will not have a chance for marriage or choice or anything. They're just going to be baby machines. And that's why, in particular, those in the know on the outside, the slang word for women is sows. And they're reduced to commodities, if you will. They're just baby factories, and that's what they do. until they're worn out. Now, the young ladies, we don't know from the book what happens to the young girl children, um, and because they're not going to be just raised and then sent back to produce more babies. There's a reason, and the idea is that the king wants to repopulate the city, Sans City, and you hear all these glorious things about the place. I mean, you never get there. And here in the story, remember, Eve escapes, and then there's flyers put out that says that she's for the king, and they're looking for her like they would look for nobody else. And so it's a story about her trying to escape and get into Califia, which is across the Bay Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge into San Francisco, where there's sanctuary. Um, and there's an underground railroad, we come to find out, connected different various places for the orphans, male and female, can get to various places, as in where Caleb lives with the young boys and Leaf and others that sank to which I can't remember for the moment. Arden and our girl Eve will go. Now the king, and Arden is the one that says, "Aha! Well, the king is an older man. He's the only good man." They're told. All the rest of them just want one thing, and in fact, the men are portrayed as brutal. You'd never want to be with one. They're seductive, they're selfish, they're all these other kinds of things, and that's what she's going to have to wean herself from. But so she goes on the Odyssey, and there's going to be a love interest that's not fully developed with Caleb, and one of the other big things to watch is trust. Is one of the really is a strong thing here. She can learns to trust Arden, who has lied to everybody. She was an orphan, as it turns out, before the plague, and so she lies to them about how she's going to go to return to the city and those kinds of things. But as the relationship between Arden and Eve develops, you'll find that Arden, Eve in particular, learns loyalty, and she learns about love because she'll come to realize that Caleb himself is a good person. Um, but there are all kinds of other things that she makes stupid choices out of ignorance. She causes the death of two people, Otis and Marjorie, because of her ignorance, because of those. And in a way, it's the selfishness of love. She wants to get a message to Caleb. Caleb told her the story about a moss, and she thinks she's going to get Caleb the message so he can come rescue her. And she, in her ignorance, doesn't realize she's signed a death warrant. And 3 people die, not 2, but 3, a little girl named Lark. So I'm telling you a little bit more about the story because I want you to concentrate on specific details as you read on how this kind of world is developed. Arden thinks that the king needs an heir, um, and, and she's not right. You have to read the second book to find out what the king wants. And in fact, we don't know. We only meet her mother through the letter. And the king and the mother and all this comes together. And of course, by the end, everybody's separated. She does get to Caliphate, as you'll find out. But that's also another aspect of the story, which is not selfishness, a selfishness that can come from love. I want you, I want what I want. It's about sacrifice as something else that we'll come to realize. So, as it happens with Cassia, her experiences are such that they will bring her the truth. But in this, in more and more of these novels, um, the change comes about. Change is not anymore just by one person. It's by usually a group of people in support of rebels and things like that that seek to overturn the corrupt dystopic society. Um, and uh, they can't do it alone. And this is important too, as I've written in an article a couple of years ago about the Hunger Games. One of the things of the Hunger Games is a lot of people don't like the third book because, let's face it, they suffer, and it seems she loses her little sister. Um, People die helping her. Um, and in the long run, it takes her many, many years before she'll have a child um, because she's suffering post traumatic stress. Um, she's burned literally. Um, she's lost hearing. And the man, I can't remember his name now, the one that she will eventually marry. I mean, he has a fake leg. He's going to be forever, ever hampered by what happened with the tracker venom that was used to basically alter his brain. So he's always asking, "Is it real?" These aren't going to go away. These you suffer, and you don't come out unscathed. And the similar things will happen in Matched. Um, the ending of Shipbreaker is not like the world's changed. He's learned a little bit about what a person he is. I mean, he's killed his father, and the woman says it's good that you don't forget because but you got to know that you're not your father, and that's part of the knowledge. And um, we don't know what's going to happen with him and the swank. Um, Maybe something could come of it, but there's the idea that she's gonna win this um, revolt within the company and then try to start making it so the people like the shipbreakers have a better life, um, increased wages, things along those lines. But it's not changed overnight. Of course, who's still in charge? It's Lucky Strike, who will um, strike a bargain with whomever he feels is in power. I mean, he knows how to survive. So it's everything doesn't change. And the ending of this novel is like Matched. It's up in the air. Um, Cassia will go on a journey, and our girl, I mean woman, young lady in our story will go on numerous journeys um, till she finds out what's really going on. And again, there's she's hurt, and Caleb's hurt, and other people, as you discover it. I hope you keep reading this one. It's pretty good. Eve, name, sounds like it means the first woman, pointing to perhaps a new future, a better future. You'll see. Uh, as you read the other novels if you have a chance. So look in those things about how the government controls things, New America, um, the reach of the power, and really in here, one other thing is that the plague reveals the fragility of civilization. Um, Civilization is a complex web, and if suddenly everything changes where you lose 98% of the population, um, you're back to the Stone Ages in many ways. And so here you have, as you do in a Shipbreaker, is everybody's living and scavenging, basically, um, off of the bones of the former civilization. Trying to find canned rusted fruit, siphoning gasoline to keep the Volvo running, um, and the ones who have power have gasoline. Uh, and that's why the troops are able to pursue Eve with such determination. Okay. Um, yeah, lots of more gets revealed about what goes on if you have the time to read more, and I hope you will. Ask questions if you want to know something about happens in the future, and I'll be glad to tell you. So pay attention to the details. I try to give you a broad outline of the story. Think in terms for your discussion thread about how these first three books relate with especially with the women characters. Yeah, and the guy characters too. I mean, uh, yeah, all of them have to learn something. The two men, young boys, in Matched. Of course, the swanky girlfriend has to learn a lot, but so does Nails. Self knowledge through experience, and we find again with uh, the situation in Match, which is a much more of a patriarchy than the other two um, books, if you will, especially thinking and concern of the poor women and what happens to them in schools. So at first, at one point, um, Caleb, who managed to escape from a labor camp and knows what's going on with Leaf and a couple who Leaf who's lost his brother, um, he says to Eve at one point, a lot of the men, the sons, the boys, they suffer too, and sometimes even worse than the girls. And of course, that to Eve, what could be worse? Okay, enjoy it. It's a quick read, and I'll have more to say later.